Same day in Washington. Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein will head to the White House Thursday for a high-stakes meeting with President Trump.
Rosenstein went to the White House yesterday as reports swirled that he was on his way out at the Justice Department, but right now he still has his job and is responsible for seeing the Russia investigation. Paula Reid has more.
We'll be determining what's going on. We want to have transparency.
On the sidelines of the UN General Assembly in New York, President Trump would not say if he was going to fire his deputy attorney general.
I spoke with Rod today, and we're going to have a meeting on Thursday.
But earlier in an interview, the president said firing Rosenstein was being looked at.
We will make a determination, but it is certainly a very sad story when you see it.
After FBI Director James Comey was fired in May 2017, Rosenstein appointed former FBI Director Robert Mueller to oversee the Russia investigation, a decision the president has criticized repeatedly. The New York Times reported Friday that around that time, Rosenstein suggested recording the president and possibly invoking the 25th Amendment to remove him from office. A former justice official told CBS News he remembered Rosenstein making a comment about recordings, but he felt it was sarcastic. Rosenstein flatly denied any suggestion of ousting the president as absolutely false.
How do you not address that?
On his radio show, the president's personal attorney, Jay Sekulow, suggested that if Rosenstein resigns or is fired, the special counsel should pause his investigation.
I think it's really important that there be a step back taken here and a review.
A firing would also add political turmoil for the administration ahead of the midterm elections.
Well, I think if he did something like that, it would cause a furor that I don't think we need right now.
All right, Paula Reid joins us now. So, Paula, take us through what happened yesterday with Rod Rosenstein, and what do we know about his meeting with the chief of staff? Because that shot of the two of them outside, the chief of staff shaking his hand, that was planned?
Perhaps. It's easy to avoid the cameras at the White House if you want to,
right.
But there is a full-on sort of paparazzi-style stakeout looking for this photo op. But let's remember, what did we expect the story to be yesterday? Judge Kavanaugh and the controversy surrounding the Supreme Court justice nominee. But instead, we got these headlines early in the morning that Rod Rosenstein could be resigning. Was he resigning? I reached out to the Justice Department and other people, and we learned that he was on his way to the White House for a previously scheduled meeting. He was going to a cabinet meeting in place of the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, who was traveling. But then we got all these nuggets coming from various officials that he was worried about being fired because of reports on Friday from the New York Times, and some of which was confirmed by CBS, about him allegedly wanting to wiretap the president back the year prior. But yesterday what happened is the whole question of will he, won't he be fired, it took attention away from Kavanaugh for a few hours. We know he did meet with the chief of staff, John Kelly, but then he went on to his previously scheduled meeting, and he has another meeting with the president again on Thursday, which conveniently will once again distract from the hearing of Kavanaugh's accuser. So this whole game of, will the president say you're fired to Rod Rosenstein, it is providing what appears to be a helpful distraction for the White House. And it seems like if the president wanted to fire him, he'd just fire him.
Right. Well, that's what I wondered. If he was really that upset about the report that came out on Friday, you'd think they would have already had that conversation. But do we have any idea what Thursday's meeting will be about?
It appears to be a fact-finding mission. The president said he wants to talk more about this. We know that there's also a suspicion within the White House and the Justice Department about who leaked this story or why it was pushed finally on the New York Times on Friday. The president and other people around him have suggested perhaps Andrew McCabe, whose memos were used to corroborate the New York Times reporting. Perhaps that was part of it. We know Andrew McCabe, he is currently under criminal investigation in Washington, D.C. He was fired, obviously, from the FBI. There's a lot of questions about the timing of that report on Friday, but then also yesterday, sort of how it was used to create this diversion. I mean, we're in a tough spot, right? Because we see these, I have to report it out. We have to talk about it because Rod Rosenstein goes, that has enormous implications for the special counsel investigation.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about that. First of all, there are some reports that perhaps the deputy AG misjudged how angry President Trump was with that New York Times article, that he maybe wasn't as angry as Rosenstein thought he might be, because he's used to getting bad press. He's used to the New York Times writing reports like this, and for him it's just another day at the races. So, and the president understands the implications of firing Rod Rosenstein. You would think.
Perhaps. I will say, starting to cover the president more and more, it is hard to gauge how he will respond to an issue on any given day. The anger cycle is hard to predict. But yes, I think the president knows that if he was to fire Rod Rosenstein, and he goes through the same calculus with his attorney general, Jeff Sessions, there are political ramifications. There are almost undoubtedly legal challenges because Rod Rosenstein oversees the Russia probe. And there is a line of succession at the Justice Department. Likely the next person is the Solicitor General. He would take over the Mueller probe. But then there are other questions about who replaces Rod Rosenstein. Was he fired? Did he resign? Can we use the Vacancy Reform Act? Can I appoint my own guy or gal? And does that person get Mueller? It just sets off a whole new set of questions for a White House that's already grappling with some pretty difficult ones right now.
You know, you got to wonder what it's like for Rosenstein because, you know, if you believe the reporting, he certainly felt that that article on Friday might have put his job in jeopardy, right? And Axios is standing by their reporting that he basically was ready to resign. But something that we've seen with the president sort of over the past few months is, you know, he's not shutting down the Mueller investigation. He can't. Right. But the attempts to undermine, to destabilize, subtly seem to sort of bubble forward. And I think about Rod Rosenstein and how do you go back to do your job when clearly he's a little jumpy about whether or not he'll keep this job next week, next month, you know, next 6 months.
Yeah, day in and day out. He knows, the Attorney General knows, they both know every day could be their last. I just think with the Axios reported, the New York Times reporting on Friday, I've reported on Rod for almost 2 years now. I spoke with him many times. It does not ring true to me that he would have made a joke about wiretapping the president in a mixed company like that, knowing some of the bad blood between the FBI officials and the DOJ. While people do remember him saying that, they say it was sarcastic. He makes a lot of jokes. When you talk to this man, I mean, he almost makes them reflexively to alleviate tense situations. But also this idea that he would have thought, he's a very smart man. He's politically savvy. Some people say he's a little slippery, but he's very smart. And for anyone to believe in May of 2017, that Jeff Sessions and John Kelly would support an effort to pursue a 25th Amendment ouster of the president. I mean, the idea that Rod Rosenstein would have believed all these people were on board to get 2/3 of Congress to oust the president, it just does not ring true, and I don't have any sources corroborating that. So as you said, Axios and the Times, they stand by their reporting, but all of the things that sort of gave rise to this situation, it just doesn't make sense based on my reporting and my experience with him. He's very smart. He's clearly done things that are controversial, but the idea that he would seriously suggest wiretapping the president in mixed company or think that Jeff Sessions, the first senator to endorse the president back last year in May of 2017, would try to oust the president, it just doesn't. There's something off.
You know, and it's a good point that you make, Paula, about, you know, spending 25 plus years in government, in public service. It's the same thing with Noel Francisco, right? A lot of people, senators and people on Capitol Hill, have said, well, I'm a little worried if Deputy AG goes, Rosenstein goes, and Noel Francisco, for example, takes over because he's made comments that seem threatening to the special counsel. But we have to remember that these folks have been in D.C. for a very long time, and a lot of them are young men and women, and they hope to be in D.C. for a very long time. Knowing what you know about them, they're not going to do something that is going to jeopardize their futures if they don't believe in it heart and soul. And that's the question that I have. Does Noel Francisco, if he, we're speculating here, if he were the one to take over after the deputy AG goes, if he's fired or if he resigns, would he actually derail the investigation, knowing that he'd be now caught up in it, he'd be implicated in it? Who knows?
I think derail is too strong a word. I think if you look at Noel Francisco's body of work, sort of in his career as an attorney, he does have sort of a limited view of the independence of the Justice Department, but I don't think that means he's going to chuck the grand jury.
The way Jay Sekulow is
exactly. No, he's not going to pause the investigation.
Right.
He may curtail. He may say, you know, I think this is a bridge too far. Perhaps we should hand Paul Manafort, I mean, too late now, but Paul Manafort's tax case off to the U.S. Attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia. He may have a different view on the extent to which Mueller can pursue, but I don't see him, a long-time attorney, a serious legal scholar, just chucking the special counsel investigation. But that doesn't mean that the president couldn't put in, some state attorney general who has totally different ideas. But again, you're seeing a one-way ticket to the Supreme Court. So it all comes full circle back to Kavanaugh. You can't escape it.
Gosh, yes, it does. Paula Reid, thank you very much.